About 13 million years ago, in what we now know as southwestern China, an event occurred that would shape our planet forever. The tectonic plates of what we currently know as India and Asia collided, causing a chain reaction that would lift the Earth's crust thousands of meters above sea level, creating what we now call the roof of the world, or Tibet, a place where fantasy blends with reality. Tibet corresponds to a region of approximately 2.5 million square kilometers in the heart of Central Asia, between India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Myanmar. At about 4,900 meters above sea level, where the air is already difficult to breathe, mountains rise that seem to reach the sky, and endless plains make us doubt whether we are still on Earth. Welcome to Tibet, the highest place on the planet, known by many as the roof of the world. Here, in one of the most isolated places in the world, wildlife fights a permanent battle for its survival. From the majestic Tibetan yak to the friendly pikas, they coexist in an almost virgin ecosystem that hides countless secrets we are going to uncover. This vast plateau, which almost touches the sky, is home to around 800 animal species and more than 5,000 plant species that defy the altitude and have turned the roof of the world into their welcoming neighborhood. The Tibetan climate is unique and represents a challenge for life. Although local tribes call this area Kaba Khan, or Land of Snows, the truth is that Tibet has a dry climate most of the year, with very little annual rainfall. The average temperatures in this isolated region of the world are usually frigid. In winter, the thermometer can reach as low as minus 20 degrees Celsius, with significant swings between day and night, and with colossal winds that lash the entire plateau, reminding us that we are on top of the world. During the summer months, the temperature rises a bit, oscillating between 9 and 24 degrees Celsius, even becoming pleasant for most fauna and vegetation. Most of the annual rains occur during this season, mainly in the southern part of the plateau, while in the north, guarded by the Himalayan range, rainfall is nearly non-existent. Tibet is also an important hydrological source for Asia and the entire world. It is not for nothing that this region is known as the Water Tower. Tibet holds the third largest ice reserve on the planet, behind only Antarctica and the Arctic. But unlike those two, the meltwater from Tibetan glaciers does not go directly to the ocean. Instead, it gives rise to many of Asia's main rivers, such as the Yellow River and the Yangtze. The extent of the Tibetan plateau is staggering. If we combine the territories of Spain, Portugal, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and Poland, it would still be larger. In this place, where low temperatures, climate, and altitude seem to be a challenge for life, there is an animal that is more than accustomed to seeing everything from above. The Himalayan vulture. With plumage that is not very showy but elegant at the same time, in shades of cream and black, the Himalayan vulture is only one example of how unique wildlife is at Tibet's heights. There, high on a cliff, at over 4,000 meters, Himalayan vultures watch the vastness of Tibet from a privileged spot. With their peculiar appearance, similar to the griffon vulture, featuring large, pointed feathers and a size that can reach up to 3 meters, we might think these birds are poised for attack, attentive to grab their next victim and carry it up to devour. But none of that. The Himalayan vultures wait patiently from above for Tibetan wildlife to set something on the table. These birds are scavengers par excellence and do not waste their time trying to hunt when they can let someone else do the work. Even their anatomy speaks to their style of feeding, as they have great strength in their beaks to easily tear flesh, but very little in their claws, since they do not need to hunt. Their scavenger habit is also the reason for the bald area on their neck and head. Thousands of years of evolution have caused this species to lack feathers in that area, allowing them to gut carcasses more easily. The Himalayan vulture's favorite meal is one of the plateau's emblematic animals, the yak. As soon as they detect, with their keen eyesight, that a yak has passed away, the vultures do not delay in arriving at the feast. making that peculiar rattling sound they always make when landing on a carcass. These inhabitants of Tibet are fervent believers that nothing served on a plate should be wasted, and they are able to strip all the meat from this large animal in only 120 minutes. Flocks of Himalayan vultures are the nightmare of any animal living out its final days on the Tibetan plateau, as these guardians of the sky are only a premonition of their inevitable destiny. The vultures usually soar in groups of between 10 and 20 members, all with voracious appetites and ready to satisfy them. When the breeding season approaches, in January, Himalayan vultures begin building their nests to care for their eggs. And what better place than a cliff thousands of meters high to set up what will be the family home for a few months? Himalayan vultures are very cooperative in rearing, often nesting several pairs on the same cliff without conflict. After about 50 days of incubation, from that thick-shelled egg with red spots emerges a small chick, which will stay with the family for about 6 months before deciding to take flight and discover Tibet's wonders for itself. Although life in Tibet is wild and there are many uncertainties, the only certain thing is that this young Himalayan vulture's future will be in the heights. However, in the vast Tibetan ecosystem, not all animals can wait for food to fall from the sky. Far from the cliffs that vultures soar around, on the mountain slopes where winter temperatures can easily surpass the freezing point, if one looks closely among the rocks, a feline silently waits to catch its prey. Capable of leaping up to 15 meters in the air, with gray fur that makes it almost invisible to its prey, blending into the frozen landscape. When the snow leopard stalks, there is no escape. This cat, which can weigh up to 55 kilograms, can hunt prey 3 times its size, so practically no animal is safe from its voracious appetite. From small squirrels to wild goats, deer, marmots, or Siberian ibexes, the snow leopard instills terror across the Tibetan plateau when it goes hunting. To fulfill its dietary needs, the snow leopard must consume about the equivalent of 1 Himalayan blue sheep per week, a very difficult quota, even for an expert hunter like this majestic cat. The snow leopard is the best example of how wildlife adapts to Tibet's demanding climatic conditions. Generally living on the slopes of mountains, where the landscape is painted in shades of gray and white, its coat camouflages it perfectly in its surroundings. The paws of this cat are a kind of snow boot, which help it walk without problems on the icy ground it inhabits. When Tibet's low temperatures press in, which is almost always, the snow leopard is more than comfortable, as years of evolution have provided it with a thick coat that acts like a coat, reaching up to 12 centimeters thick in some areas. Additionally, it uses its extraordinarily long tail, which often reaches 100 centimeters, as a scarf, keeping the rest of its body warm. And when the time comes to walk the rocky and steep terrain it typically inhabits, the tail helps maintain balance. Likewise, its large nasal cavities allow it to warm the air it breathes, working like a kind of mask. A day in the life of a snow leopard is not usually very busy. This cat spends up to 18 hours of each day between naps and breaks, saving all its energy for hunting, because not even the glorious king of the Tibetan mountains knows when it will eat again. While one might expect to hear a roar echoing over many kilometers of the silent steppe, the snow leopard is the only member of the Panthera genus without the capacity to roar. The snow leopard's life on the Tibetan plateau is often very solitary and elusive. The immensity of the region suits its territorial nature, as a single individual can control up to 1,000 square kilometers of territory. The most active moments of this big cat's day are at dusk and dawn, when mountain goats, one of its favorite prey, ought to hide for their own good. Even though forming a family is not so easy for the king of the mountains, when there is a chance to find a female in heat, they do not hesitate. The females of this species produce a peculiar howl to signal that they are ready to mate. After mating, both animals embark on a journey of between 2 and 8 days, during which the female will seek a rocky spot to line with bits of fur for her babies, and the male will eventually depart. After about 90 to 100 days of gestation, the mother gives birth to two small cubs. As a good single mother, she alone is responsible for caring for her young, nursing them and protecting them from Tibet's dangers. After a year, they will be ready to seek their own territories and go on being the kings of the mountains in this majestic part of the world. However, the vastness of Tibet is not only inhabited by fierce predators and scavengers on the lookout for their next meal. Among the endless forests of this region of the world, there is a friendly creature that prefers to take it slower and live life at its own pace, devouring tasty bamboo shoots. With its characteristic black and white fur in a rather retro style, the giant panda is a resident of the Tibetan neighborhood who needs no introduction. Its gentle, laid-back temperament makes it one of the most popular animals. In a territory where day-to-day life can be a challenge, the giant panda has decided to take things easier, roaming the forest looking for delicious shoots of its favorite food, bamboo. While some animals might worry about the possible scarcity of food in the region, the panda does not concern itself with that complicated world of competition, since its digestive system is specialized for digesting the fibers of this plant. Though it is true that the panda's digestive apparatus is similar to that of carnivores, it has opted to become a vegetarian. Although from time to time, if a small rodent crosses its path, it will not hesitate to eat it as a snack. Because bamboo is low in nutritional value, this adorable black and white bear must spend much of its day eating. About 14 hours of its daily routine are spent just feeding, consuming nearly 40 kilograms of bamboo a day. The abundance of bamboo in Tibetan forests means these docile bears do not need to hibernate, since they have a supply of food year-round. Thus, while the Tibetan brown bear, a close relative and also living in this region, worries about building up fat stores for winter, the panda continues its unhurried daily routine, even when the snow begins to fall. The panda's calm and peaceful appearance should not deceive us, as this Tibetan resident is a true survivor, adapting to the conditions of its environment. In a place where temperatures can be hostile, the panda has a fur coat that serves as natural protection to withstand those days when the thermometer can be below -10 degrees Celsius on the plateau. Similarly, its body fat helps it retain heat longer, avoiding hypothermia in one of the harshest winters on Earth. Though its imposing size, which can reach up to 150 kilograms, might make pandas seem clumsy and awkward, they are actually excellent tree climbers, a skill they learn from a young age to protect themselves from potential predators and to mark their territory from above. The panda's life is generally solitary, and each adult has its territory well defined to avoid problems with other members of the species. This harmony among neighbors in Tibet's forest is broken when the mating season arrives in spring, when as many as 5 males may vie for a single female. At this time, pandas forget all about their reputation for pacifism and cuteness to earn the right to mate with a female who, interestingly, has traveled long distances in search of her suitor. Only the strongest panda will get to pass on his lineage and produce offspring who will continue the relaxed lifestyle of these usually peaceful vegetarians, while male pandas fight a pitched battle over who will get the coveted female, right there in the vastness of the plateau's forest. Another species lives by an even more complex hierarchical society. Tibetan macaques. These forest dwellers are another marvel of nature that Tibet has given us. True to the difficult living conditions, Tibetan macaques are the largest monkeys in all of Asia. Males of this species can weigh up to 20 kilograms and measure up to 60 centimeters. Another of their most striking characteristics, just as crucial when winter arrives, is their beautiful fur, which is dense and long to protect them from low temperatures. The color of the Tibetan macaque's fur tells us a lot about their age. Monkeys who have reached adulthood after about 2 years show dark brown fur, almost black on their heads, arms, backs, and legs, while their faces and bellies feature lighter beige tones. Young macaques, on the other hand, have much lighter fur. Unlike the panda, which lives on a practically single food diet, bamboo, Tibetan macaques take the idea of a balanced diet quite seriously, consuming up to 100 different species of plants. Due to their large size and the harsh environment they inhabit, they have a tremendous appetite and never say no to nature's gifts in Tibet. These colossal monkeys feed on fruits, leaves, stems, flowers, shoots, bark, and even insects. When hard times arrive in Tibet, usually winter for macaques, they adapt their appetite to whatever they find. Options are fewer at that time, for example, fatty seeds and starchy nuts. After finishing their foraging, the macaques check their storage pouches, nothing more than their cheek pouches, to see what will be on the menu for dinner. While the snow leopard is solitary and territorial, and the panda clashes with members of its species, Tibetan macaques believe that the bigger the family, the better. These monkeys live in a fairly complex hierarchical society, ruled by an alpha male, who is the largest and strongest. The fate of the other members of the group depends on their sex. Young males, upon reaching adolescence, will have every opportunity to leave the group and find their own territory, as the leader does not want competition. Females remain in the group in which they were born, as long as they comply with the alpha's requirements. Like any hierarchical society, the alpha male has access to the best females, as well as the most delicious food. Life in Tibet does not seem so bad for this imposing creature, with a privileged position in one of the most remote forests on Earth. But the alpha's reign will not last forever. As time passes and age takes its toll, he is constantly challenged by other males seeking his coveted position. With an alpha in decline and younger, stronger contenders, the power shift is assured. Another important event that often happens in groups of macaques in Tibet is group fission. When a group becomes too large in number, 40 or 50 members, resources start to run low, and generally the younger ones decide to leave to start a smaller group, where survival may be simpler. This is undoubtedly a risky move, and only time and the harsh Tibetan wilderness will say whether it was the right decision or not. With the Tibetan macaques who abandoned the group facing an uncertain future, yet hoping for a better life, we head to the Tibetan grasslands. In a place where, in summer, every space is teeming with animal life and wild vegetation, we find a species to which the Tibetan ecosystem owes a lot: the pika. The pika is the smallest mammal on the entire high plateau. At just 140 to 300 grams in weight, these little workers see hard work and ingenuity as the only way to survive the harsh conditions of Tibet. Pikas are not a single species, but rather an entire genus that includes 29 markedly similar species, and many of these live in Tibet. Very similar in appearance to common guinea pigs, covered in dense fur in various shades of brown, and with a non-threatening look. It may be difficult to believe that these cute creatures are true survivors, and that many other Tibetan species depend on their existence. Pikas play a key role in the delicate Tibetan ecosystem. Being small herbivores, they spend much of their time in search of food through the grasslands, frequently digging as they seek seeds or sprouts, aerating the soil of the plateau, which helps preserve it. When pikas are not roaming the grassland in search of food, they are probably in their rudimentary burrows. It is there, in these cozy homes, that they protect themselves from the many predators around and store food for the harsh Tibetan winter. And speaking of winter, one key to the pika's survival in those freezing temperatures is planning ahead. Since these little mammals do not hibernate, they do not need to gain weight before the cold arrives in the plateau. Instead, they spend all summer stocking up their pantry with all kinds of grasses, shrubs, lichens, and mosses, so that when the season of scarcity arrives, they have plenty stored. Although it's true that pikas feel perfectly at home in temperatures below 25 degrees Celsius, when the Tibetan winter arrives, they have no choice but to hide in their burrows. During this time, even though they do not hibernate, pikas reduce their metabolism by up to 30% in order to make the most of the food they have stored. Even if a handful of grass might be worth its weight in gold in these conditions, pikas are very collaborative and usually share the food with their burrow companions. Of course, some pikas try to abuse this hospitality and look to loot the reserves of others. In such cases, these tiny mammals clash to protect what they have worked so hard to gather all summer, No matter how much pikas plan for winter, one never knows when the Tibetan plateau will bring more cold days than expected, and often the stored food is not enough for everyone. This is when the pika is forced to do something unexpected, reflecting the cleverness and desire to live of this animal. It leaves its burrow and finds a food source that might not be refined but meets its nutritional demands, the droppings of the glorious wild yak. With all the grass in the meadows gone and its stomach growling more than ever, pikas do what they must to survive and hold on until the Tibetan ecosystem grants them another sunny dawn. Although they are unlikely to be pleased about it, pikas occupy a crucial place in Tibet's food chain. When medium-sized prey becomes scarce due to the plateau's harsh conditions, pikas are an excellent source of food for species like foxes, hawks, weasels, and they are even the brown bear's favorite prey. While pikas are part of a fairly diverse genus of species inhabiting the Tibetan plateau, there is an animal that is the sole survivor of its taxonomic family, a symbol of survival even when its habitat is threatened: the red panda. Despite its name, the red panda has nothing to do with the giant black and white bear that lives in Tibetan forests. In fact, it is more closely related to raccoons, about the size of a domestic cat, with a dense fur that certainly lives up to its name. The red panda is one of the most iconic species in this part of the world. Although it looks truly adorable, the red panda's body is a gift of nature for survival. Its fur, like that of every Tibetan inhabitant, is thick and quite dense, to protect it from low temperatures and wind in this high-altitude region. Its long, fluffy tail helps too, much as it does for the magnificent snow leopard, as a scarf to ward off the cold and to keep balance on slippery surfaces. Its short black legs exemplify how species adapt to their environment, since they have thicker fur that is ideal for walking on snow. And, when it's time to climb, the red panda effortlessly displays its retractable claws to climb trees and stay safe from predators. For the red panda, there is no better way to start the day than with a thorough grooming. Before setting out, this fluffy creature performs a ritual of cleaning its fur, licking its paws, and massaging its back and belly. Although it has little in common with Tibet's majestic giant panda, they do share many similar habits in terms of behavior and feeding. Both are excellent sleepers. The red panda can spend up to 2/3 of the day resting, generally among tree branches, curled up on its tail. In the time they are not saving energy with a pleasant nap, they are eating. And if your name includes panda, what else would you eat but bamboo? Approximately 60% of the red panda's diet is made up of this highly sustainable plant. Yet, since you cannot always eat the same thing, this small mammal also consumes leaves, flowers, fruits, berries, insects, eggs, and even small mammals or birds it encounters, as it is able to digest meat. When you measure no more than 60 centimeters and live in a neighborhood as wild as the Tibetan forest, you must know how to defend yourself, since you do not inspire much fear by appearance alone. When a red panda feels threatened by some intruder in its usually peaceful habitat, it has two options. The first, if possible, is to avoid battle in the middle of the forest, escaping to the nearest tree using its adept climbing abilities. If there is no way out, this little and not so fierce red panda has no choice but to gather courage and face its aggressor, standing on its hind legs to seem bigger and swiping with its sharp claws. While the snow leopard is the red panda's most frequent predator, and in a one-on-one fight it would have no chance, this tactic can sometimes work as a last resort before ending up on the cat's menu. However, becoming prey for the fearsome snow leopard is not the only concern weighing on some species of Tibetan wildlife. In the vast and icy landscape, another hunter prowls, living a very different lifestyle: the Tibetan wolf. This cunning carnivore not only faces the challenges of the terrain, but also the responsibility of leading and feeding its pack in one of the harshest regions on the planet. Having earned the role of alpha male in its pack, this wolf is the one chosen to reproduce with the best female. In the intricate lifestyle of Tibetan wolves, this is a survival tactic that ensures the pack's strength by producing pups with the best possible lineage. The pups, usually between 4 and 6, are born in spring, when the Tibetan Plateau offers the best conditions for life. At this time, they depend on the mother's care, as they weigh only about 400 grams at birth. Despite having to serve as the family provider in such a hostile environment, not everything is bad news for the Tibetan wolf, as nature has been generous and endowed it with all the skills needed to be a successful hunter in such demanding surroundings. Weighing up to 32 kilograms and measuring up to 1.65 meters, the Tibetan wolf may not be as imposing as the snow leopard, but it is just as efficient. Stealth is the key to its hunting success. With fur that changes depending on the season, white, brown, yellow, and black, the Tibetan wolf can hide perfectly among the vegetation while stalking its prey. When the prey detects it, it is often too late, as the Tibetan wolf can reach speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour. By comparison, most of its prey move in slow motion, trying not to become the dish the wolf brings home to its beautiful family. The diet of these very close relatives of Himalayan wolves is very varied, consisting of anything the Tibetan wilderness puts in front of their fangs. Common prey for this canid are deer and other large mammals, such as Himalayan blue sheep, which are already in enough trouble with being on the snow leopard's menu. Of course, when the chosen prey is more difficult, there is always the card of hunting in a pack. Working together, several wolves ensure there is food for their stomachs. And when a single specimen can eat up to 9 kilograms of meat in one meal, there is no time to dawdle. Yet Tibet's conditions occasionally mean these wolves cannot be too picky about the menu. On hard days, when steppe life becomes more demanding, smaller prey like marmots, hares, ground squirrels, and mice are not despised at all, and serve as a decent source of nutrients. Having a large family to provide for is reason enough for the Tibetan wolf to hunt both day and night. If the times of greatest activity on the steppe do not yield results, there is always the nighttime shift, when with the moon as its companion and its heightened senses of sight and hearing, the probability of success is high. Meanwhile, Mother Wolf stays home, in a comfortable burrow that keeps the little ones safe from the hazards of the steppe. After 3 weeks of nursing, the pups are ready to taste the meat their parents regurgitate, which offers all the nutrients they need to grow strong and healthy, in an environment where there is no place for the weak. Gradually, the pups take on roles within the pack, learning from their parents and actively participating in the hunt. When they reach sexual maturity at around 2 years, they are ready to seek a female in a new territory and start their own family, where the magical cycle will begin again. However, Tibetan wildlife does not consist solely of imposing and ferocious creatures like the Tibetan wolf. There are also species that do not stand out for their size or aggressiveness, but that have nonetheless adapted to this majestic ecosystem, making Tibet their personal burrow. One of these is the friendly Himalayan marmot. Perhaps at 5,200 meters above sea level, one of the last animals we would expect to find is a cute marmot. But make no mistake, what the marmot lacks in size and ferocity, it makes up for in ingenuity and planning. Marmots illustrate perfectly that to survive in Tibet, you do not need big claws or horns, or be a master hunter. In the middle of Tibet's alpine meadows, on the border between forests ruled by the pandas and the coldest zones where the snow leopard is absolute king, Himalayan marmots have an enviable condominium of burrows. As a terrestrial rodent no taller than 70 centimeters living in one of the wildest places on Earth, Himalayan marmots know that a good shelter is important. They can dig burrows up to 10 meters deep to weather Tibet's harsh winter. Also, considering that Himalayan marmots spend about 8 months a year hibernating inside their burrows, it is well worth having a comfortable spot where they can curl up and protect themselves from the extreme temperatures and the predators that, in times of scarce food, see a marmot as a dream meal. Himalayan marmots are planners by nature. As soon as spring arrives and the cold temperatures are behind them, the countdown begins to prepare for the next winter. The goal of a Himalayan marmot is to triple its weight in the months of abundance on the Tibetan Plateau. To achieve this, they consume a wide variety of grasses, preferring flowering plants, which have higher nutritional value. For Himalayan marmots, if time to eat is limited, they will not waste it on junk food, which in their case would be older plants high in alkaloids. However, given their friendly and playful appearance, it is easy to guess that it's not all work. Himalayan marmots also know how to have fun in their precious time outside the burrow. Being very social animals, interactions among burrow neighbors come quickly. One of the Himalayan marmot's favorite games is play fighting, where it looks like they have forgotten all that cuteness and started a full-blown battle. But there is no need to worry. It is just a game. Of course, this fun can sometimes be interrupted without warning, as we should not forget that we are in one of the places with the greatest biodiversity on Earth, and the marmot's size and ferocity do not exactly inspire fear. To defend themselves from the numerous predators they have here, marmots use a sophisticated alarm system. As soon as they spot a predator on the prowl, the sentinel issues a distinct squeak. This is the call for all members of the community to leave whatever they are doing and take refuge in their burrows. This guard duty is generally assigned to the adult males in the burrow. Their role is crucial because, while they keep watch for threats, the rest of the community can feed undisturbed, ensuring everyone's survival. This willingness of the adult males to take care of others is only one example of how well organized and efficient Himalayan marmot society is. Another clear example is their practice when it comes to raising the young, where the task of keeping the babies warm in the depths of the burrow is shared by several adults, even if they have no familial ties to the pups. All of this with the aim of ensuring the species' future. Not far from the Himalayan marmot's neighborhood, heading toward the endless Tibetan plains, we find a species with imposing antlers, and that is thoroughly adapted to the daily hardships of living thousands of meters above sea level, the majestic Tibetan red deer. With abundant fur that, for most of the year, looks brownish red, true to its name. The Tibetan red deer is a species that only the almost untouched ecosystem of Tibet has been able to protect. The majesty of this herbivore reminds us of the great biodiversity that the plateau's forests, mountains, moors, and plains house. The appearance of the Tibetan red deer does not lag behind that of the other species inhabiting this region, one that is closer to the sky than any other place on Earth, with an imposing set of antlers that do not envy those of other horned creatures of the plateau, like the yaks, and a blackish mane evoking incredible creatures from the other side of the world. Tibetan red deer are a marvel of creation. Of course, as with every deer subspecies, there is a marked sexual dimorphism, as the females lack the characteristic antlers and are more compact than the males. Males can weigh up to 230 kilograms and measure 120 centimeters at the shoulder. With virtually the entire vastness of Tibet at their disposal, the Tibetan red deer does not limit itself to a specific habitat, rather migrating constantly to the places offering the best life conditions, depending on the time of year. When the thermometer shows milder temperatures on the plateau, and the thaw gives rise to swarms of flies and mosquitoes that usually bite the Tibetan red deer, it climbs to higher areas, where thanks to the abundance of the season, it will have no trouble finding food. Conversely, with winter coming on, and given that living in cold mountains thousands of meters high is not exactly best for survival, the Tibetan red deer seeks new destinations at lower altitudes, where it is easier to shelter from the cold and find food. Regarding food, the Tibetan red deer has a fairly varied diet, composed of grasses, leaves, sprouts, shoots, and even bark. For it is quite simple. If nature produces it, it devours it. Deer living in lower regions of the plateau often browse on trees, with the abundant willow being their favorite. Every part of the Tibetan red deer's anatomy is useful for its survival. Its thick, striking fur helps it withstand Tibet's cold conditions, and its sensitive muzzle is critical for detecting predators and communicating with each other through pheromones. but there is a part of its body that it will use extensively once the breeding season starts, and that part can measure up to 70 centimeters, firmly attached to its head. When the mating season begins and there are females involved, Tibetan red deer show their more feral side, clashing in fights that determine which male will mate with the fertile females. Everything begins with a characteristic bellow, announcing the start of the battle. After that, each male charges with all his might, using his antlers as true weapons, pushing forward until the other surrenders or dies. The winner has the right to mate with the herd's females, whom he will then abandon after mating, continuing his life with a group of males. Females must care for themselves during a gestation of no less than 33 weeks, and then take care of their offspring by themselves. At the end of this challenging period, each female gives birth to a single fawn, requiring maternal milk for at least 8 months. The fawns learn from the herd's habits everything they need to survive on the steppe. Upon reaching maturity, usually between 3 and 4 years of age, the males leave the group to explore new horizons, while the females remain in the herd, where upon reaching their sexual maturity, they will be ready for the onset of the mating season once again. There, the males will clash for the privilege of reproducing, renewing the life cycle of this majestic herbivore. With hundreds of animal species such as the agile snow leopard or the rapacious Himalayan vultures dominating the Tibetan plateau, there is a creature so amazing that it overshadows them all, earning the title of Tibet's most emblematic species, the colossal yak. The yak is a large bovine with abundant hair, which has made the Tibetan high plateaus its cozy home. These giants, which can weigh up to 1,000 kilograms, can live at heights of up to 6,000 meters. To withstand Tibet's hostile temperatures, the yaks possibly have the warmest coat on the plateau. The yak's fur is impressively long across its entire body, especially in the belly area, where it often touches the ground. This thick layer of hair, as black as Tibet's winter night sky, combined with its high percentage of body fat, works like a personal heating system that allows the yak not to be bothered, even when the rest of the plateau's wildlife is going through the worst conditions. The majesty of the yak forces Mother Nature to crown it the King of Tibet. And what better crown than a pair of horns over a meter long adorning its head? They grow almost horizontally from its skull and then curve upward and inward, giving them that unmistakable shape. When it comes time to eat, the yak sets aside all its royalty and sticks to a simple diet. Its ability to adapt to the available food in this far corner of the planet is what makes the yak an expert survivor at high altitudes. Its diet mostly consists of grasses, shrubs, mosses, and lichens. Thanks to its highly developed digestive system, it can extract nutrients even from these foods, which are low in protein and minerals. The yak is definitely the ideal Tibetan resident. Despite reaching imposing weights of up to 1 ton, it is incredibly good at climbing and adapts to almost any terrain. When one area lacks food, yaks do not hesitate to roam in search of new horizons where they can meet their modest nutritional needs. In this pursuit, their powerful sense of smell guides them like a compass, allowing them to detect favorable pastures. While life for some yaks may unfold in solitude with only the stars at this altitude for company, others choose to live in groups of up to 12 individuals. Daily coexistence among yaks is often peaceful, and it is very helpful for huddling together in those harsh winter days. When warmer months arrive in Tibet, the yak adopts new habits, since it no longer needs to be in maximum survival mode. With a coat that is very abundant, good for winter but less so for summer, many yaks decide to do something different and bathe in any available water source. Being in one of the world's most important water reserves, they have no trouble finding a place to splash around. Unlike species such as Himalayan blue sheep, pikas, or Tibetan red deer, who live on the edge of danger as prime targets for the top predators of the area, the yak sits at the other extreme, having no natural predators. While there may be occasional attacks by Tibetan wolves or snow leopards on calves, these are very sporadic, and adults generally are not threatened by the plateau's fierce hunters. Therefore, the yak is without a doubt the dominant species in Tibet. possessing every survival trait needed for the harsh conditions of this part of the world. While one could describe them with words like imposing, majestic, or colossal, untamed does not fit these bovines, as many yaks have been domesticated by the locals of Tibet. These giants power the development of human settlements, serving as pack animals and providing huge supplies of wool, milk, and meat. Even though human settlements owe much to the resilience of the yak, the bovine has not been particularly favored in this relationship. The domestication of yaks on the Tibetan plateau, some 3,000 years ago, has reduced the species to only around 10,000 mature individuals. Poaching these giants, as well as crossbreeding with other livestock, have led to the yak now being classified as a vulnerable species. Of course, numerous efforts exist with an eye toward preserving this massive creature. Nowadays, in all of China, the yak is a protected species, and several reserves have been created to promote its reproduction in a natural state. But the mighty yak is not the only species affected by climate change in this almost unreal corner of our planet. According to various studies, the Tibetan plateau is warming at a rate 3 times higher than the rest of Earth. This means that the many glaciers, home to, for instance, incredible creatures like the king of the mountains, the snow leopard, are disappearing, creating a crisis in this ecosystem that, until just a few years ago, was considered pristine. Desertification is another phenomenon wreaking havoc on Tibetan wildlife. Because of the abrupt temperature changes on the plateau, areas that not many years ago were alpine meadows, where Himalayan marmots established their elaborate burrow systems, have turned into desolate deserts, where wildlife is scarce, and the vegetation may have vanished forever. The instability of the rivers due to the sudden glacier melt is changing the habitat of hundreds of species at once. Those streams that used to foster willow growth for the Tibetan red deer now contain only small pools, and in the warmest summers, not even that. Tibet's forests, and with them all their animal species, are likewise severely impacted by human activities in the region. Deforestation has eradicated extensive forests that served as habitat for species like the gentle panda or the troops of Tibetan macaques. Yet the transformation of Tibet's ecosystem does not originate exclusively from human activities in this part of Asia. Scientists have shown that the burning of forests in the Amazon, more than 20,000 kilometers from the yak's home, influences the temperatures of the Tibetan plateau. Through a complex system that involves atmospheric and oceanic circulation patterns, dust particles produced by massive forest fires in South America travel to the other side of the world, heating the atmosphere and causing the infamous greenhouse effect. This, combined with the enormous hydrological importance of Tibet to the rest of the planet, means that its preservation is no longer a matter just for China, but a worldwide concern. The good news is that there are now hundreds of organizations working to preserve this extremely important and biodiverse corner of our planet. Although the task is challenging, the animal inhabitants of Tibet deserve the joint effort of all of us to maintain their habitat. If you have enjoyed learning about the stories of the wildlife survivors of the roof of the world and would like to continue discovering more about the wonders of nature on our planet, do not hesitate to like this video and comment on which animal was your favorite. You can also subscribe and activate the notification bell to stay on top of our new wildlife stories. See you next time with more tales of animal life.